everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's been so long since I've turned on the camera and actually spoke or made a video, and I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to everybody that's reached out to me or has subscribed in the last little bit. I am slowly getting my new place sort of decorated and livable, and so I have been taking a little bit of a pause, but I am back today with another video, and today I'll be talking about imposter syndrome, specifically on tips on how to overcome imposter syndrome, because we all suffer from it. And so these are the tips on overcoming and trying to talk down that inner critic that can be super loud sometimes. So if you want tips on how to overcome imposter syndrome or just how to talk down that inner critic, keep on watching. One of the first things I realized suffering from imposter syndrome, it's because I had crazy expectations of myself and in turn others. And what I mean by that is that I was a perfectionist, and perfectionists tend to not want to do things until they're completely ready, until everything is aligned, until things are perfect. And they will not rest until that very thing that they're working on is perfect. And so if it doesn't come to fruition in that sense, they tend to obsess over it. They tend to tell themselves they're not good enough, that they weren't able to do it, and all these negative talks, and it turns out to be very unproductive. And so I think the number one thing to overcome imposter syndrome and overcome that voice telling you you're not good enough, that you shouldn't be here, that someone's gonna, find you out soon, is to sort of let go of that very high perfectionist expectations of yourself, and just remind your brain that you're just human, you're just learning, you're evolving, and you might make mistakes, but that's all part of the human experience, is that you learn from your mistakes and you move on. That is one of the ways in which I have overcome my imposter syndrome, is to let go of that perfectionist attitude and sort of talking myself down from the ledge, saying that, and just reminding myself to be nice to myself. Another thing to overcome imposter syndrome, especially early on as a designer, is to practice. And part of why imposter syndrome creeps up is because it reminds you of all the times that you could have been, working on your portfolio, working on your resume, polishing up your skills in some sort of tool. And it goes back to those times and reminds you, hey, sort of remember those times you didn't do those things. Well, now is where you need to showcase those skills that you can't because of X, Y, Z. And that negative talk just comes up and up and up. The more that you've done the thing, your brain sort of quiets itself up. And so I suggest practice when you can your craft, whatever it is that you do. If you're a designer, do critiques, look at different apps, design things that you might not, design things that are not part of work, and just keep practicing that skill. And that's another way to sort of overcome imposter syndrome, by practicing and letting the brain shut itself up. Another technique to overcome imposter syndrome is to remind yourself that you are not your work and you are not what your brain is telling you. Part of what we experience when it comes to imposter syndrome is your lizard brain. And when people refer to their lizard brain, it's pretty much their sort of primitive side of the brain, the part of the brain that controls fight or flight. It's very instinctual, that tries to keep you away from danger at all times. And that's just through our evolution, that pain equals bad. Pain, anxiety equals bad, stay away from it. And that's part of trying things that are new. When you try new things, you're bound to feel some sort of, just a mild nervousness or anxiety, and that's when your brain signals to the rest of your body that no, you can't do this. You need to stay safe. You need to stay in homeostasis. So you need to stay sort of just neutral, calm. And that's when your brain will try to convince you that you cannot do this thing. You're not good enough. And don't believe your brain. Try to remind yourself that this is just your lizard brain, that you're just trying to keep yourself safe. But it's okay. You're not in danger. It's not do or die. Whatever it is that you're doing, it's going to be okay. And so I think just recognizing that and understanding where that mechanism or where that voice is coming from. And to be absolutely frank, sometimes it is lizard brain, sometimes it's learned behaviors through, teachers and other authorities like parents, bosses, where they sort of imprint their voices and ideas on you. And so a lot of the times your brain will echo that. And so that's where the practice and the other steps come into play, because you're able to overcome that only when you are able to convince your mind these things, that you're able to sort of overcome it and recognize it for what it is, which is not the truth. Another crucial step in overcoming imposter syndrome is to welcome feedback. And feedback is scary. Feedback can be nerve-wracking. I know, especially when it comes to design, a lot of us tend to treat our designs as part of us, and that's where it can sort of get dangerous, because you, again, are not your work, and welcoming feedback from others on your work will only help you get better at your work. And so it is so important to welcome feedback and take in the feedback to an extent. So you don't necessarily have to take everything for gospel, especially when it comes from different stakeholders within your company or clients. You'll definitely get better at sort of, piecing out which feedback is relevant where. But I think just being open to that feedback will help you become a better designer, or just a better employee, or better at your craft. And in a way, it'll help you deal with those inner criticisms, because you've dealt with them sort of verbally. You have that practice. A lot of the times we allow our brains to say things to ourselves that we would never let anyone say to us in person, nor would we ever say to anybody else. And so I think part of that soliciting feedback and appreciating feedback is the ability to sort of absorb the feedback for what it is, whether that be the truth or not, whether it be helpful or not, and sort of working through that so that you can apply those same principles back to that inner imposter syndrome voice telling you that you're not good enough, you can't do the thing, you should stop doing the thing. And the last thing to overcoming imposter syndrome is sort of a trick, but it's not to see it as something that you overcome, that you'll never ever suffer from again. One of the things about imposter syndrome is that you're never completely scot-free of it. I'm sure that, people in super high ranking roles still think to themselves like, should I be doing this? Am I? But the voices, and that's not something that you ever stop experiencing. It's every time that you start putting yourself in new situations that voice sort of comes up again. And so it's, having these tool sets in your box, having these tools in your toolbox to be able to reach to and say, oh, no, I know I'm feeling this way because I need to practice more. I need to get better at my craft. And that's just my brain reminding me that I haven't put in the work yet. Or it's a total load of crap. Like, I am totally valid to be part of this conversation or to have this input. And these are the reasons why X, Y, Z. And so don't ever feel like something like you need to conquer it. It'll completely be gone, but it's okay just being okay with it and having the tools to sort of silence it and silence your mind. Never let your mind trick you into thinking that you're lesser than, or even if you're better than. You might be more experienced than, but you're not necessarily quote unquote better than, because I don't really believe in that. I definitely have, when I started my job at Wattpad, I was a senior designer now, and I thought, holy crap, am I really a senior designer? But again, I had to remind myself that I've gone through the checks and balances of people far smarter, far more, with far more experience than I did, who thought that I was up for the task or saw potential in me stepping up to the plate of a senior designer at a company like Wattpad. And those are the things that I had to remind myself in the moments where my lizard brain, my imposter syndrome, my negative self-talk crept up and told me that I wasn't good enough. And I hope these tips have helped you. these tips have helped you. I know a lot of you have asked me to make a video on this. I didn't want to drone on about how I've experienced it and I've been through it and these are my experiences with it. But I'd rather be much more practical and proactive about how to overcome it because, again, we all suffer from imposter syndrome at one point or another, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I don't know if you have any techniques of your own that you use to combat your imposter syndromes, or if you've experienced imposter syndrome in the most unlikely of times that I'd love if you have to share. I hope this video helped you to get some tools in your toolbox to become a better designer. See you in the next video. Bye.